Hi, everybody. My name's Dale Sandberg. I've been with QSC for 12 years. And my role at QSC has been one of a product manager. A product manager works directly with the engineering staff, developing products, but also ensuring that I take input from the marketplace. And so, um, one of the things that I like about QSC, and I've worked at other companies, one of the things that I like about QSC is the fact that we do take a lot of input from the marketplace. And so as we were looking to develop some new products targeting what we're going to call business music, and even that term isn't necessarily perfect. There's so many applications where audio is part of the system, but it may not be the primary focus. So when I say business music, I'm talking about lots of applications. Yes, it could be a restaurant or a retail store, but it could be a fitness, it could be a gym, right? Or an aquatic center. It could be a bowling alley. I mean, we've seen people use these products in multi or mixed use spaces like commons areas for apartments where they've got a gym and they've got a playroom and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of applications where these types of products fit. When we started developing these products, we recognized the need for something that was affordable and yet still provided a good amount of processing. This is actually a family of products that we brought out. So we brought out these processors. We also brought out some new amplifiers and loudspeakers. And if we get some time, I'll address those towards the end of the presentation. But I want to focus on the processors because they're really kind of the heart of this new system. We created two processors, and you'll find that their prices are very affordable. Um, and oh, normally I press that button and it changes, but let me go to this and page down. There we go. So the two processors, here's all the action. The MPM 40 is an 8 input. I've got 4 mic lines and 4 line level inputs, so a total of 8 inputs, and then outputs for up to 4 zones. The MPM 80 is a 16 by 8 processor, and really the only difference between them is the number of inputs and outputs. In regards to the rest of the processing, they're completely identical. They both offer a dedicated music on hold output, and so if you're using the system with a music on hold, a PBX telephone system, you have a dedicated output that's already balanced for that to interface with that phone system. There's also 2 logic inputs or general purpose inputs that can be used for logic functions like recalling scenes. And so this could be a fire alarm mute, or maybe I've got an air wall that opens and closes, and so I've got a sensor, and so when the wall is closed, it recalls one scene. When the wall is opened, it recalls a different scene. So that's what your general purpose inputs can be used for. For communication, of course, we've got Ethernet, and that is the primary form of communication. This is, you can either plug it directly into a PC. So the way I'm actually running my system today in my office is I've just got an Ethernet connection directly between my PC and the unit. But I can also go through a wireless access point, or connect it to a router and then use a wireless access point. Now I can walk around wirelessly programming the system. I've also got these 2 ports that we call MFCs, for multifunction controls. These are wall controllers, and these wall controls can be used. Each port will drive up to 4 wall controllers. Now this is not Ethernet. This uses RS-485. And the reason we chose RS-485 is because, number one, it reduces the cost of the product. But number two, it means we can run much longer distances. Each of these ports, like I said, will drive up to 4 wall controllers, and the farthest controller can be up to 250 meters away, so almost 800 feet. On the front panel, we've got a couple of things that are somewhat unique. We've got a headphone jack, and this makes it really easy to do signal verification. So I don't necessarily need to run the outputs to amplifiers and loudspeakers, I can actually listen and verify that my signals, my input signals, and even my outputs have got the correct signal before I even connect amplifiers and loudspeakers. And then we've got a USB port directly on the front panel, which means that I can walk up to the unit with the USB stick, plug that stick in, and load my program, and now it makes it really easy to be up and running. When you talk to end customers, whether it's the bartender or a fitness instructor or whatever, control is the system. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that our wall controllers and our application provided the functions that were necessary. First of all, wall controllers. We've already talked about the MFC ports on the back of the unit. These are the two multifunction controllers. The square one is just the European style. So in Europe, they've got square and actually round boxes. Of course, in North America, we've got the single gang, Decora style. And up to, like we said before, up to 8 controllers can be used per system, and up to 250 meters. The functions that are available on the wall controllers are, volume, source select. I can also do scene recalls from that wall controller. So it's very, very simple, and the control actually looks a lot like what we're showing here. We also created a dedicated application to run on smartphones or tablets. This is called MP Manage. This is meant for the end user. And on MP Manage, I can provide a variety of controls. I can provide the same controls as I have from a wall controller, so volume and source select, or I can do scene recall. Because I can do scene recalls, I can actually create a scheduler. And so that's something that's unique and available from the MP Manage software. If I have multiple users, I need a way to be able to manage the security, the access of who has what controls. There's a built-in mixer in the processor, and we'll get into each one of these functions. Excuse me. Each one of these functions in just a couple minutes. I also have a USB audio player. So if I have a USB stick with MP3s, I can actually play music directly from that player. And then finally, something that's really unique, I have the ability to actually do paging from my phone over the system, and I'll show that a little bit later. So some really unique functions. Of course, I don't have to give them all these functions. If I only want to give the bartender access to the bar, he doesn't have the other zones available to him, and they're grayed out. People who don't need access to security, that's grayed out for them. But the manager probably does need security because he's going to, choose which access level the hostess has, which access level that fitness instructor has, and so forth. This application is available for both iOS and Android smartphones. We also have a separate application that can be run on tablets or, of course, on a Windows PC. And this is how I set up the software for the NPM zone mixers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to go into the software. Can everybody see my software right now?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, good. What we see here is, and this is an NPM 40 that I've got here in my home office. The only difference between the NPM 40 and the NPM 80 is the number of inputs and outputs. And so if this were an NPM 80, you'd just see more inputs down below here. So what I've got here is I've got a number of these inputs set up, and of course I can name them anything. I've got DSP functions available to me. So if I need to do a parametric EQ on that input, I would turn that PEQ on. I'd high pass that and make whatever adjustments I want to. Yeah, that sounds fantastic, or whatever, right? Yeah, I'm just going to reset that. So I can see, here's my inputs, and these are the mic line inputs. Here's my RCA inputs. And then under more, I have two digital inputs. Right now I'm actually playing music from my USB player, and then this is the input where that Wi-Fi paging. So if I page from my phone, this is where it comes in at. And I can make adjustments. I can EQ that. In fact, I have gone in and I've high passed that signal there. Um, and so you can see some functions there. All my navigation's down the right-hand side. So I'm on inputs, and again, mic line, RCA, and so forth. Here's my outputs. And because this is the MPM 40, here's my 4 outputs. Now I've set up my office, so I've got a stereo, a pair of speakers here set up in stereo. I was pretending earlier, and let's say I've got a zone that's the patio, and I can send my audio out to that. And earlier I actually had set up a subwoofer and was playing with that, and so I can set up each of these outputs and create zones. Um, Here's my dedicated music on hold. It's just a separate output, and I would select the source for that. Yeah, so that's my USB audio player. And now, music is going out to that music on hold output. Inputs, outputs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a dedicated mixer. The interesting thing about this particular product is any of those inputs can be used for sources. So this a Bluetooth player or this Bluetooth receiver, a CD player, the audio from my PC, all of these are set up as inputs, and any of my outputs, so if I go to my office and click on sources, any of those outputs can be used as sources. And right now I've selected my sound from my PC. So if I listen to YouTube or something, it would be streamed to this output. Um, I can add other sources in this list, and here's that mixer. That mixer is now a source that can be added to my list of sources. So if I was to mix these inputs, and here I've got my microphone in, my podium, the CD player, my PC stereo input, and I bring those up, then that's being sent to the output of the mixer. So it's just a unique capability. I can treat it as source selections, or I can treat it as a mixer and then use the mix to feed my outputs. Um, One of the things that's kind of unique about this processor is, as we talked with integrators, people who install them, many of them said the same thing. I can find my way around the DSP. My biggest problem is I'm not sure when I'm done configuring the system. I'm not sure when I'm done programming. And so what we did is we gave them a checklist. Now this is, you don't have to use it, but it is a tool that can be used to help ensure that you're going through the setup process correctly. So if you've already got a configuration file, maybe you're working with a chain, you've got a small restaurant chain, and you've already done 1 or 2 installations. You've already saved those configurations file. These are just links to places in the software. So I can go click load configuration. Oh, here's that Five Guys restaurant I did, or Blink Fitness or something. I can click on that. I can recall that, and it will, in fact, I'm just going to do that now. And it's going to load that configuration for me. So yeah, okay. There it is, the Five Guys restored. And now, and I don't remember what those inputs are, but I was working with somebody and he's got a couple of inputs there, and then here's dining, kitchen, prep, and exterior, right? So there's their 4 zones. Great, I can go back to my setup wizard, check that box off. Next thing is input configuration. Maybe I want a paging input. So this is going to be a paging mic, and I hit enter. I've named that input, and now I've got my usual tools. I've got phantom power if this is a microphone that requires phantom power. I've got input trim, so I can adjust my input gain level. I also have input delay, and this is something that you typically would not use unless you're using some video source. sometimes when you go through a video matrix, it will delay your video signal, and so you need to delay the audio for the video. And so here I can add, 30 milliseconds or something like that. And usually 30 frames per second is about it's about a 30 millisecond delay. And so I can adjust my audio so it matches the video, so I don't get the samurai movie effect where you get the lips moving and you're not hearing the sound at the same time. Um, polarity flip, all the stereo linking, all of that kind of stuff. Great. And I can go through next, and go through the other inputs. Great. I've set up all my inputs. Check that box off. Output configuration, same kind of idea. In this case, this takes me to the output. This is output 1 right there. This is it's already been configured as my dining room. The interesting thing to note here, of course, I've got polarity, channel safe. So if I recall a scene, it won't. If I enable safe, it doesn't make any changes there. Stereo linking, delay. This is the master level for my zone. And so when I play music, this is what governs 0 to 100%. You can see the number up above, 0 to 100%. That's what the customer will always see either on the app or on their wall controller. But that 0 to 100% is of this range. So I can choose how much range they get. So they could have 60 dB of gain, or they could have 6 dB of gain. And 0 is just this level here, and 100% is this level here. So by adjusting my maximum and my minimum, I really can choose, what the volume is in that particular zone. And it means that they can't break the system by turning it up too loud. It also means you won't get that service call that you sometimes can get when they've turned it all the way down and then forgot. Well, if I set my level there, you're still going to be able to hear it. So just gives me some control over the system. And again, I can, this is zone 1. I could go next, and set up the other zones. Great. I'm happy with that. Check that box off. And so I'm going through my setup wizard and just setting up each zone, each input as necessary. Now, really, the heart of any DSP processor is its routing matrix, and we call that sources. And so we've already kind of seen this screen, but in this case, what I'm going to do, this is the exterior zone, and I'm going to go back to my dining room. Now, what I have here is my list of sources. And so I'm going to, let's say I've got to input 2, and on input 2, in fact, I'm going to go to input 2, and I'm going to make that a CD player. So just for grins here. Or some streaming, music service, whatever. But now I'm going to go to this guy, my outputs, to my dining room, and now there's my CD player. If I want to add other sources, then they're just in my list, and I can scroll down and add those other sources. So, maybe I want to add my USB audio player. This on tells me which source is actually playing. And so it's a radio button. Only one can be selected at a time. So I have up to 8 different sources that can be shown. If it says none, that means it does not show up on my wall controller. If it does have one of those sources selected, then it shows up on the wall controller. So the end user will be able to choose between the CD player and the USB player, as an example. In addition, I've also got 2 levels of priority override. So these are essentially sources that will duck these sources. So if I wanted to, that paging microphone could be set up as a source. And now when somebody makes a page, this adjusts that level. My ducker adjusts how much it's going to, at what point. So once I get a signal stronger than 40, minus 45 dB, it's going to duck this signal. It's going to lower the level for this signal. How much is it going to duck it? 30 dB or 48 dB, whatever I want it to be, or only 3 dB, something like that. So it gives me the ability to have a priority override. So I could have a paging mic, and then I could have an emergency page, or maybe a jukebox or something that ducks these signals. no matter what's selected here. And so each output has this source selection. This is what we use for our routing. And so I can go through each one of those zones and set them up independently. Now, one thing to know is there's an awful lot of things to set up. And so we've tried to speed the setup process by using, we've got a field over here that gives me the ability to make some adjustments. So once I've got this zone set up, I may want to copy and paste that. So I'm going to select copy, go to my next zone and hit paste. And now it copied all those elements. Again, just trying to speed the integration process, right? If I'm on a if I'm on a click on a fader right there, I can actually nudge these up and down. If I click on fine, I can nudge them by smaller increments, that kind of a thing. If I click 0, it'll take it back to its original position. So this is how I would set up these particular zones. Great. I've got all my zones. Nice graphing bug. Okay. It's my graphics card on my PC at work there. Now, probably the last thing that I need to do in terms of DSP and architecture is I'm going to set up loudspeakers. Each output has a complete list of all the QSC loudspeakers. So if I've got some QSC ADS loudspeakers, and I can just scroll through this list here, maybe I've got the 4-inch pendant loudspeaker. I can just recall that speaker tuning. Yes, I want to recall that. And so it's loaded that speaker tuning. Now those DSP presets are hidden. They're behind the scenes. You can't see them. Of course, we recognize that there are times when you have to use somebody else's loudspeakers. And so for that, we have a complete list of filters that are available. And so you can create your own speaker tuning for those, those Bose, those JBL, whatever loudspeakers you've got. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I love the way that sounds. Um, and so I've got a complete list of tools available to me. Once I've got the setting I want, I can go and I'll save that as a user preset. And so I click Save As, and this is Bob's speaker, and I'll hit Save there. Yes. And so now Bob's speaker is available in my memory. So the next time I use this, I can use that loudspeaker. But of course, QSC speakers will sound better, so we always recommend those. Anyway, and again, I can go to each of the outputs and select loudspeakers. At this point, I'm done with most of the what I would consider the logistical elements of setting up the majority of the PA system, the system within that restaurant, within that fitness center, whatever. I can, however, go into my inputs and say, I do want to, add some parametric EQ, like I said before, on that paging microphone, or dynamics. Here we have either a compressor or automatic gain control. If it is a microphone, a compressor is probably more handy. If it's a music source, sometimes automatic gain control can help level out those the loud songs versus the soft songs. In that case, I would set a maximum target, I would set a minimum target, and then this DSP algorithm will work to keep the music within this range right here. So from song to song, it can be as seamless as possible. And then again, more useful for microphones, but there's also a noise gate available to me. And so that's those are some of the tools that I have in my on the input side. Go back to my setup wizard. Yeah, I've done all my inputs. I'm happy with that. Same kind of thing on the outputs. I have more tools here. We've seen sources already. That's our DSP routing, audio routing. Here's our speaker presets. The next element I have is a graphic EQ, and we put graphic EQ because it's more familiar for a lot of people. So I can go and set up that that output and EQ those speakers as I as I want. One thing you'll notice is it does have a built-in real-time analyzer, and so this RTA is available This is just an electronic signature of the audio that's passing through that channel, but it can be a helpful tool. Another tool that I have is I do have feedback suppression. Now, generally, this would only be helpful for live zones. So maybe I'm doing a restaurant and bar, and they've got a little stage in the corner. You know, the acoustic trio comes in on weekends, and so they can actually use this feedback suppression algorithm to remedy feedback that might occur when the guitarist moves his microphone in front of the speaker. Another tool that we have, this is actually quite useful, is a loudness function. Now, loudness is sometimes something that's not well understood. Um, what this feature is these curves that you see behind in the plot here. These are called the Fletcher-Munson or the equal loudness contours. They represent the way our ears hear. At low volume, our ears need to hear more bass for it to sound musical, for it to sound even than they do at high volume. And so we built an algorithm that takes this into account. So essentially the way I would do this is I would set my fader, my master fader for the zone somewhere around the middle, 50, 55, something like that. So this is kind of my starting point. I would then set my threshold for the zone, the threshold for the loudness function, just underneath that. What this means is when the volume gets turned up, our ears flatten out, which is why every single speaker demo you've ever heard has always been loud, because our ears flatten out. We actually hear more low frequencies, and our brain likes to hear low frequencies. And so when the volume's turned up, great. I'm not really adding any loudness function. But once that volume turns down and crosses the threshold, this algorithm begins boosting the bass, and it follows these equal loudness contours. So it's mostly just bass that it boosts. But by boosting the bass, it means that no matter what your volume is, the system won't sound thin. Because I know we've all experienced that where the system sounds great when it's turned up, you turn it down and it gets thin. That's just your ears. That's your ears' natural response. This algorithm is meant to compensate for that natural response. So it boosts the bass. Um, you know, and that's really based, it's a dynamic EQ based on the output level of the zone. And then finally, the last DSP element in the system is a limiter. So again, I can limit the output and make sure that I'm not gonna clip the system, not gonna blow any speakers up or anything like that. So those are all my DSP tools, again, on the output side. And we've gone and we've checked off most of the boxes here. Now, the last couple of things I would want to do is set up wall controllers. So in this case, I can select I can name a zone. So, maybe this wall controller is being put into the dining room. Great. I want it to function for the dining room. So I'm not going to select kitchen. I'm going to select the dining room. By selecting that zone, it automatically gives me the volume and sources that I have available to me for that dining room. If I select a different zone, then it's going to be, whatever was set up for the kitchen, as an example. So if I go to kitchen, I can see that in the kitchen, it was these two, and here's my, my 0 to 100%, which was actually set in my setup. So I know I'm kind of jumping around a bit, but let me go back to the wall controllers. So it gives me the ability to select a zone. Now in multi-zone mode, it means that I can actually select multiple zones. And so one controller can actually control multiple zones. So that's really how that works. I do find it's less confusing when I just keep it in single zone mode, because then you don't have that extra menu to select the zone first. Additionally, if I have saved scenes, I can add scenes, and my scenes would show up in this list here, and then I could add scenes that could be recalled from my wall controller. So this is how I set up wall controllers. And as I told you before, I could have up to 8 different wall controllers, and I can just name them. This is the bar, right? And then I could, if I had a zone that was the bar, I would just select that zone. So that's how that functions. Go back to my setup wizard, check that box off. The last couple of steps are setting up smartphones. Now, the smartphone obviously has more function, more capability than the wall controllers do. And so in this case, I'm not setting up individual wall controllers, I'm setting up access profiles, um, different functions that these different people can do. So the bartender, you know what? He's only, and actually I'm going to change this prep zone to bar just so it is more consistent here, bar. Okay, go back to my setup wizard and go to smartphone. So the bartender only gets access to the bar. What other functions does he have access to? No, I don't want him to do Wi-Fi paging. Who knows what that guy's going to say late at night? I don't want him to schedule anything, but I do want him to be able to recall scenes, because he's got to be able to recall the happy hour scene, or maybe maybe you're setting this up for a fitness studio, and you've got we've got a couple rooms that are multi-purpose rooms, and so this is the yoga scene, and this is the Zumba scene, or whatever it is, right? I don't want him to be able to save scenes, lock zones, but maybe the bartender does have some audio chops, and so he can access the mixer, because when that band comes in, he mixes them. Does he have access to the USB player? Yes or no? And then finally, security. Now, word about security. The manager, this top level, I'm going to hit save for the bartender. Yep. Yeah. Okay. The manager always has security. Wow, that's weird. Should always have security enabled. That's really strange that it's, let me just click on this and go back. I think it's because I saved this configuration earlier. Really weird. Okay. Anyway, the manager should always have security enabled. Um, I may have to reset this unit. That's really strange. But anybody else does not have security automatically enabled. And so that means that if you want them to have access to the security, you have to give them that access, and that would just be doing that. Once that is saved, then all they need to do is put in the password for the phones. And I'll show passwords in just a second. So we've set up our smartphones now. Now, the final step would be, maybe you want to send a report back to a project manager. Here's the report that says, hey, this was Five Guys, Chino, whatever. Work order number, location, address, who's the electrical contractor, who's the project manager, who am I, right? Once I'm done, I can just hit generate report, and it saves a file. If I'm running this on a tablet, it actually generates an email directly with that report in it. But because I'm on a Windows machine, it just saves a file, and then that system report to, this could be, Chino Five Guys, right? And I can save that report. So that's kind of the quick tour. Now, these are all just links to places in the software. Most of them are links to inputs or outputs, but a few of them, like configuration, like report and smartphone, are links to the menu. And so things that we have in the menu, configurations, we've already seen that. That's where I recalled that Five Guys. Here I have scenes. We haven't seen this one. So if I want to save a scene, I can save everything. It's just a global snapshot, or I can save specific channels. It's just going to be input 1, because that's that paging mic. And it's also going to be my stereo zone, right? And I could hit save. And then it would, of course, I'd name that. This is, a happy hour, whatever I want that scene to be. Other things that I have in my menu, scheduling. So this is where I can create a schedule, and so I just type in new event, and this is, again, we'll just do happy hour, right? And when does it start? What is the start time? So I'm just going to scroll down. It's starts at 5 p.m. and oh, because I don't have a scene, I don't have a scene to select. But you see the general idea. How often does this repeat? Oh, this repeats just on weekdays, right? So I have the ability to set up these events, and I can keep adding events to my schedule. Here's my wall controllers. We've already seen that. Here's the smartphone setup, which we've already seen. Other tools that I have, this is my general purpose inputs. And so if we had scenes, maybe I'll just save a scene just so we've got some. Um, just quickly, scenes, and save as, and sure. So this is going to be happy hour, and I'm going to save yes. So it's going to show up there, but more importantly, um, in my scheduling list. Now, if I go to scenes, right, I can load that scene, enter, done. It loads the happy hour scene. If I go back into my GPI setup, now I can load that happy hour scene when GPI 1 goes open, right? And it's going to recall happy hour. And if I had another scene, then when GPI 1 goes closed, I'd recall that other um, scene. But I'm just going to reset. Yep. And then finally, the report. So we've seen most of that. Other tools I've got a system test function, which means I can send an input or pink noise or a sine wave to any of the outputs. And so if I wanted that pink noise, I would enable, and I would turn that on for these zones. And then here's add some gain, and now I could walk around and listen to the pink noise, and walking around in the system. I've also got a real-time analyzer. And so I can look at every single input and output. So am I getting signal from these inputs, or is signal being sent to those outputs? So just a couple of tools that are available there. And then finally, network setup. This is all pretty straightforward. And so I'm, if I'm connected through a network switch, I just leave it an auto IP and leave it DHCP, or I can have a static IP address. Security, this is something I wanted to mention. So the password for install, which is this piece of software, is admin. That's the default password from the factory. The default password for the phone application, MP Manage, is access. And we do have an API available, so if you want to control the system via Crestron or RTI or some other third-party control system, you can do that, and there's a password for that, and that is simple. So those are the three passwords that are set up from the default factory passwords for the system. And then finally, hardware settings. I can set it up for the various time zones. I'm actually in the Mountain Time Zone, so I'm going to set that up for Mountain, and I'm going to sync to app time. And so now it's copied the time from my computer into the system. So today's the 23rd. It's the 12:42. Some basic hardware management stuff, clear internal storage, all of that. The most recent version of software and firmware is version 1.1.1. 103, and I can download an upgrade. If I'm connected to the internet, I can download directly, or I can put the upgrade on a USB stick and plug it into the unit, and then upgrade from USB. So this is all relatively straightforward. One thing I should mention, this USB playback, we recognize that a lot of dealers sell content. We don't want to compete with that. And so from the factory, USB playback is defaulted to off, which means you're not able to access it. So if I want to play audio from my system and use that USB stick, I just need to enable that. And now that it's enabled, I can play audio. But you should know that the default is off. So that's kind of the basics of programming, and you can see the navigation again, very simple: inputs, outputs, mixer. You've seen the setup wizard. We've kind of gone through that, and then the menu structure. So those are all. Oh, I should point out, if I want to listen to my headphones, here's my Q level. So this adjusts that headphone level on the front of the front of the mixer. So that's kind of the basics of programming the system. So now I'm going to hop back into my presentation real quick and just probably have to do this thing over again. Yeah, I know it always does this. Okay, so we've seen the MP install application and how that's set up, and you can see it's relatively simple and straightforward. So that's kind of the basics of our new system. Now we've talked about the zone mixers. We actually did create some new amplifiers, some affordable zone amplifiers that one of the unique things about them, I've got 2, 4, and 8 channels all in one rack space, and each channel is selectable between 8 ohms, 4 ohms, or 70 volt. So I can have one channel on 70 volt and another channel on 8 ohms. Each channel is capable of delivering up to 400 watts, but the average power is 200 watts. So they share power across channels. Another thing that we just recently developed and have begun shipping is the new subwoofer satellites, loudspeakers. And so these are surface mount, which is the top here, the surface mount sub and satellites, pendant sub and satellites, and ceiling sub and satellites. These speakers all are a fantastic little system. The way they work is I wire to the sub, the crossover and transformer is in the subwoofer, and then I can wire out to my loudspeakers, up to 4 loudspeakers. And so my maximum tap, I can run this low impedance, in which case it's a 4 ohm load, or if I'm running at 70 volt, the maximum tap is 100 watts, and the same holds true for each of these subsats. The other nice thing is, because they all use the same driver set, I can mix and match. So I could use a surface mount sub with pendants, or the ceiling sub with surface mount loudspeakers. It doesn't matter. And then these are just some of the existing QSC loudspeakers, some of our ADS, our standard format surface mount or ceiling loudspeakers. So that's kind of the overview of the new business music products. But again, probably the star of the show is this new zone mixer, because it is very affordable and yet provides, as you can see, it provides a lot of control and processing functionality for a lot of different types of applications. I'm going to see if there are, and I'm not quite sure where the questions would be. Are there any questions here? Let me see, chat. No questions shown.
No, it's for me. I got them.
Okay,
So
excellent.
the only chat you should see is me saying that I was gonna run and get a water and I'd be back in
Oh,
5 minutes.
okay,
So
all right.
okay, but we do
Well,
have
good.
some questions. So all right. How do I make this full size? Pardon me just a moment. Okay. Bill asks, on the output, what do the letters C and M stand for?
C and M. Let me hop back into the software so I know what we were talking about here. On the outputs, let me just see where he's talking about. Oh, good question. That's a great question, Bill. C indicates if that signal is being sent to the Q bus, to my headphone jack. So if I'm in the dining room zone, and there's a bunch of things I haven't shown you yet, but if I go to sources, right? If I cue that output, it's being sent to the Q bus. So I can click on it here, or if I'm on my main outputs, I can see it's clicked right there. this is the channel mute. So I do have this. These are more indicators. Um, if I'm in a zone, it's easier to maybe use these larger buttons. But yeah, great question, Bill. Um, yeah, there's actually a number of things I haven't shown you just because there's really a lot to this. Well, I should mention we QSC prides ourselves in our training videos. If you go to QSC training it's our YouTube, one of our YouTube pages, um, we have full training modules for these. And so essentially almost 2 hours worth of training, additional training that will take you deeper into how you do certain functions. But this certainly is the overview, giving you some elements and a quick showing you quickly how to do some programming. Yeah, so here I can cue that paging microphone. I can also mute that paging microphone. Great question. Any other questions?
Absolutely. So Peter's asking if will the webinar be recorded and shared? The answer, Peter, is yes. So we archive all of these at youtube.com/allnetdistributingu. And also, Tim got your text. He's sitting right next to me. So we'll definitely follow up with you when we're done with the call. Well, I should say when the link goes live, but we'll definitely follow up with you. Peter has an additional question. This is a question that's been posed multiple times here. Integration. So specifically, the question was asked about integrating with control systems like Control4, RTI, Crestron, etc.
Right, and so we do have a white paper, as I mentioned, under security. The simple password is necessary to use the API, but we do have a white paper about how to integrate the npm with third-party devices. I just got off the phone this morning before this call. With an integrator who has used it with a Crestron control system. So it certainly is possible, and if your customer wants that touch screen or other types of control, that is available. Yeah, good question.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the next question that comes up. So we've got the I don't remember if you called them scenes. I think you called them scenes that
Hmm.
you can set up for happy hour and whatnot. Is
Yes.
there a way to do that that defaults after a certain time, like say at midnight, or maybe not midnight because bars are open later than that, but let's say at like 7 a.m. it automatically defaults to its or returns to its default state?
Yes. So yeah, the way that I would do that, in fact, I'm going to set up another scene just to do that, and I'm going to hit this, and this is going to be daytime, right, or whatever we want to
Can I
call it.
share the application that's being suggested?
Yes.
Okay, because we mentioned the priority override for like a jukebox and priority override above and beyond that, a master priority override for a paging mic, like a host to stand microphone.
Right.
So NFL, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, etc. They don't even want the jukebox to override. If someone puts money in the jukebox, the jukebox is off because it's NFL time. But
Right.
at 7 o'clock in the morning, breakfast service, lunch service, etc., they want the rule back in place for the jukebox to override the house music.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a great scenario. So let me show you how I would do that. So I'm going to save this as daytime. Now I haven't made any changes yet to these two scenes. So what I'd do for daytime is I've got it set up and here's let's pretend my dining room is where we want to do this. And so I've set up my paging mic and or the jukebox or whatever it is, right? Then I go to, so that's all good for daytime. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to recall, go to scenes, and I'm going to go happy hour, hello, and then recall that, yes. So it's recalled happy hour. Now I'm going to make a change under happy hour, and in that case, I am going to go back to this and say none. So there is no priority override setup. Go back to my menu, resave this scene, happy hour, save. Yes, update scene, happy hour, blah, 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 affects these zones. Yes. So I've resaved that scene. So now I'm going to go to my menu and I'm going to do the schedule. So happy hour, new event, 5 p. Okay, so let's go. This is happy hour. Happy hour will be recalled at 5 p.m. on weekdays, right? So I've saved that. Now I'm going to yeah. Now I click new event. Now this is daytime. This starts at 1 in the morning, and this selects daytime. And so during happy hour, it's not going to recall. Remember, we saved happy hour, so there's no priority override. Daytime is going to happen daily, and it just returns to our default settings. And actually, I need to hit enter there, so daytime's copied. So 1 in the morning, it's always going to revert back to, or 3 in the morning or whatever. It's always going to revert back to that daytime scene, and that happens daily until January of 2070. And this obviously could be changed. 2075. Um, and so yeah, and so you can just have this scene automatically recall, and it's just scheduled. So, and I could have an NFL that just happens on Mondays. Monday Night Football just happens on Mondays. So yeah, absolutely, you can have that. So I have scenes that are recalled, and it, when it's recalled, I've changed. I can go back and save that that happy hour scene. So something else I want to do, right? I'm gonna bump that volume level. Great, and then I go and resave that. And so you can see how I can adjust these settings, and now when it recalls this one, it's back to the paging mic and all of that. Got that?
Yeah, this system is ridiculously powerful. Okay. Um, the next question that pops up. This is a common question as we've been posing this to. I want to call this dealer type resi-mercial. People who
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of residential and then also cross over and do a lot of light commercial. Is it
Absolutely.
possible to have stereo output zones? And then Mike asked an additional question: is it possible to have a stereo output zone that also has a subwoofer zone associated with a separate volume control?
Great question, and I'm glad somebody asked it because I should have covered it and I forgot. So yes, when I'm setting up my outputs, the setup is where I set up and name my outputs. And if I was in my setup wizard, when I went to output configuration, that's where it would take me. When I stereo link zones, so it's stereo link those channels. Now, if I go to outputs, you can see that they've got this divider here, and that name should have carried over. What's here? Let me go just to name it. Enter, and now I go back to. There we go. So you do want to name them the same thing, and that's just because you can still name them independently. But whatever you do now on the DSP for one channel goes to the other channel. And so if I've got a stereo source, it will get sent equally to both of those stereo outputs. Now the subwoofer question is a really good question, and it's not. So I'm just going to rename that one too. Not that. Okay, the subwoofer question is a really good question. We get asked that a lot. It's weird. Let me just go and go back. Yeah. So I'm going to turn channel 4 into a subwoofer. I'm going to go here and I'm going to call it a sub. Great. But the unique thing about a subwoofer is I want the source for this sub really to be the same source as my stereo zone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select stereo left and right. So under my source selects, I have all my inputs, but if I scroll down, I also have my outputs. So if I select stereo left, right, and that is the only thing that's selected, then whatever audio is going through this stereo automatically gets sent to that subwoofer. So there I've got my stereo zone plus a sub, and as long as I wire outputs 1, 2, and 4 to their appropriate speakers, I'm all good. Does that make sense to everybody?
Absolutely. All right. And so Mike's follow-up question is, can we have a track volume? And then also, can we adjust the essentially like a trim level without going back to the input, without going back to the source? Can we modify the ratio of bass? I guess I don't know
Yes,
how
yes.
to
And
state it,
that's
but sometimes you want thump and bass, and sometimes you just kind of want that subwoofer turned down a couple dB.
right, right. No, that's perfect follow-up question. So if I go to my main stereo zone, this is the master level for that zone. And the signal that is being sent to the sub follows this. So if I turn this all the way down to 0, then it's whatever that minimum value was, right? Whatever this minimum value is, that's the lowest level that will get sent to the sub. But the sub still has its own volume. And so if I go to that zone, I can still adjust the volume for the subwoofer independently. It will track. So as the audio comes from my stereo zone, up or down, it's being fed to the sub, but I can still independently adjust that sub level either here or here. So I've got multiple ways of doing it, but yes, I can track volume, and so that sub will go soft when the main zone goes soft, and vice versa. Really good questions, guys.
Okay, the next question that pops up. On the MP install app, how do you set multiple channels to each play multiple input sources? Normally there is a matrix. Hold on. This truncated your question. This question comes from Josh. Let me see if I can full screen this whole thing. I'm trying to watch the presentation and have the
Yeah.
chat window open.
Chew gum,
All right.
walk, pat your head, rub
Well,
your stomach.
I can do a little bit of that, but
Yeah,
no, this is
exactly.
I've only got one screen, so I always when I do these, I grab my laptop and I go to the quiet part of the office, which is very isolated. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at a tiny screen here. Okay, on the MP install app, how do you set multiple channels to each play multiple input sources? Normally there's a matrix to do this, but this mixer doesn't seem to have one.
So the question assumes that multiple inputs are either playing at different times, or you've got multiple inputs and you're trying to mix them. I'm not sure I understand the question. If you're trying to mix them, then you can mix them using the mixer. So if I had multiple microphones going, as an example, I can mix them using this mixer. And in fact, I've actually got auto mixing functions. So if I wanted to, an example of this might be, I've got a function room in a hotel, and I've got a panel discussion. So I've got 3 or 4 people on a table there, and they all want to talk at the same time, or they don't. However that panel discussion works out. For my auto mixing, each of the microphone inputs has the auto mix capability. And so the way it works is, if one person's talking, he gets all the gain. If 2 people are talking, they share the gain equally. If 3 people are talking, they share the gain. And so you can see how that that can be helpful. But in this case, I only have one mix. There's not multiple mixed matrices. There's only one mix. Now that mixer, right here, my mixer left, right, can then be sent. So if I go to my outputs, and I'll go to my stereo output, that mixer can be selected as a source. So if I selected the mixer, now that mixer and all those inputs, which are being mixed, can be sent to this zone. When that panel and the volume gets turned up and it sounds great, when the panel discussion is over, I can switch back over to my background music. And so to answer your question, it does not have multiple matrix mixes. It's got one mix that can be sent to any of the output zones, um, and then of course you can also select individual sources.
Okay. So yeah, it definitely functions kind of like our traditional matrix switches, where you can select unique input or unique sources to each zone,
Right.
or common sources to multiple zones.
Yes.
So, or like you said, you can use it as a mixer as well and have multiple things live at the same time.
Right. And as an example of that, we've had a number of high school gyms where they've actually got a couple different scenes. One might be the basketball game scene where they've got full bleachers going. The other one might be the pep rally scene where they've only got bleachers on one side going. And so they turn on different parts of the PA using different scenes, but they also use the mixer and have scenes on the mixers. So it can be, maybe it's just the principal, maybe they've just got one microphone, or they're using multiple microphones, and now they can adjust those mixer levels, either here in MP install, or remember MP manage also has the mixer capability. I can actually adjust my mixer level from the mixer levels from MP manage, and that can be run from a tablet. And so
Nice.
we've seen them do that a lot with school gyms. Yeah.
Speaking of running it from a tablet, Richard has a follow-up question about Mixer View. Is the Mixer View available on the end user app? And then, did you go over permissions on the end user app?
I didn't, and the difficult thing here is I don't have a Windows a Windows application for permissions, because it's only run from iOS or Android. So the only
Okay.
thing I can really show you is, and it's not even really complete here. Yeah, it doesn't even show permissions. But the way the security works, man, I really do wish I had some screen captures that
Richard, I
showed
will
it.
say, I just went through the videos that Dale was
Oh
referring to
yeah,
about
there you
10
go.
minutes ago. We can't really do them as a part of the webinar because there's so many people on the call and each person has their own connection. So the videos are historically terrible on the webinar series. So I would say definitely I'll follow up with you and I'll send you the link. But the two hosts of the web trainings are hilarious. They're very
Yes,
thorough, and they definitely review
the
setting up
security settings. Yep,
permissions,
yep.
yeah, on that. But so Dale, the meat of the question is the mixer view. Is it something that would be available on one of the permission levels?
Yeah, so this actually shows you all the different functions that are available. Can you see my presentation again?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, we're back
so
to you're on the presenter. I have it on the wrong
yes,
screen, but it's fine. We're all adults here. We know there's a presenter mode.
yeah, okay. Well, yeah, exactly. So what this is showing is it shows all the buttons that are available. If I clicked on that mixer button, and I do wish that I could do this here, um, but it's only iOS and Android smartphones or tablets. So if I click on that, it actually shows the mixer, and it gives me the ability to mix, master and now click on this and go to mixer. It shows essentially I've got my master level, I've got independent levels for each of these inputs, I've got mutes for each of these channels. So it does give me mixer capability. Yes.
Yeah, that's
From
pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Richard has a follow-up question. This is more about the business case, and this might be directed more to us distributors. Who can sell this? Are there any restrictions? So I know that the QSIS has a qualifier. Um, I don't believe we're putting qualifiers on business music
No, the
platform.
business music stuff is available to any QSC dealer and distributor. Yeah. So the
Okay.
NPM
And
and I should mention the NPM and the wall controllers, right? Don't want to forget about the wall controllers, because they do make the system, it makes it elegant for the end customer. The Both the mixers and the wall controllers are, as you'll see, are pretty affordable.
okay, and then I guess a follow-up question to Richard. Is this distributed through the QSC distribution channel, or do the ProSound resellers have access to this product as well? Like the Sam Ashes and the places like that.
It's not promoted to regular retailers.
Okay.
I think they can. I'll be honest. I think they can special order it, but certainly nobody's stocking it. Certainly nobody's. They're. I mean, the other piece of this, again, if we're being honest, there's an awful lot of retailers that do installs out of the back of the, back of a van kind of thing. So, I'm sure some of them will be special ordering it, but
If we're
again, it's not promoted to regular retailers.
if we're being honest again, some of our best commercial guys are guys that started out working on the floor at places like that and doing installs out of their
Absolutely.
van, and then decided to
Yeah.
start a company doing it and quit their retail job. So,
Yeah.
all right. So Mike's asked. Oh, okay. Michael is asking a question about microphones. How does the microphone ducking work for
Oh,
when a
okay.
page comes
The
on and to duck the source that's playing?
Yeah, so I can explain it sort of generically. The way um, the way these types of things work is when I select that microphone, right? That microphone is selected as my priority override source. When a signal is detected um, in the algorithm, so I set my threshold level. Once the signal of this paging microphone passes, in this case, minus 74 dB, once it, which is a pretty low level, once it passes that, and so somebody's actually talking into the microphone, now it's going to start ducking this. And so it's really using if you're familiar with the compressor, the way a typical compressor would work, and if I go back to my inputs, I can kind of show that a little bit. Yeah, I'll go into dynamics and show a compressor. Normally with a compressor, what it does is there's a detector that looks at the signal level. And once it's past the threshold, it will begin squishing the volume down for this input signal. That's the way a compressor works. A ducker essentially uses a similar detector, but it's not squishing down the microphone, it's squishing down another signal. It's squishing down the music signal in the case of ducking. So whenever somebody's talking on the microphone, it's squishing down this USB player. And so it essentially compresses it, or it ducks it down by however many dB you want it to. So that's kind of the basic idea behind a ducker.
Okay, and again, because I just went through this training, the the slider right below you is hold, and that
Yeah.
was the one that really sold it for me because you don't. These are details that just aren't on a lot of products.
So the way that, yeah, it's a great point. So what hold does is once this signal is ducked, so I've got music going on. Let's just say this is CD player and it's just playing whatever's going on, and somebody's talking on the paging microphone. You don't want, the second somebody stops talking, you don't want this signal to burst back up immediately. You actually want a little bit of hold time, and this is milliseconds, so it's a pretty short. This is thousandths of a second, and so you want 100 milliseconds or so uh, before the CD player, and this is a ramp. The CD player will ramp back up, and so this hold time gives you the ability so that you can make your page, and then after that page is made, then your CD player will start again. The volume will start ramping back up on your CD player. It gives you time to make sure, yes, I made the full page, and it doesn't allow the CD player to come back up between every break between words, right? So it just gives you makes it sound natural.
So you don't have to go. Sandberg, party to your table is ready.
Exactly, exactly.
Nice. Okay. Um, all right. Let me see. More questions. Holy cow, we're starting to get a bunch. Um, you showed some of the connectors for control. What connectors are used for input and output channels? Aha. You want us to see in the Phoenix.
Oh, so the back panel. Yeah. So let me get back to here and so this is, and again, presenter view, but you all get the idea. This is my mic line inputs. Now, the reason we put these line level inputs, these RCAs, is because a lot of times, if you talk to a bar owner, or you talk to somebody who's using uh, these other sources, it's off the shelf CD players or dish receivers, and they typically have RCA outputs. And so when we were developing the product, we asked a lot of integrators, and they said, frankly, it's just simpler just to put RCAs for those line level inputs. And so the microphones typically, it's an XLR type cable. You'll cut the end off the cable. We've got the Phoenix connector. It's a nice crimp and go. But for your standard off the shelf commercial players, typically they just have RCAs.
Nice. So yeah, we saw a lot of Sonos with Sirius XM for business, or Deezer for business, that kind of stuff. We saw a lot of that kind
Right.
of stuff for, and then
Well,
obviously, like you said, DirecTV and Dish Network receivers,
yep.
Comcast boxes. All this stuff's getting jammed up either behind TVs or centrally located in the rack, and then matrixed out with video matrix.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's really nice. Let me see the next question. The mixer looks like something I might put in a live performance scenario. If I needed that, I would use a touch mix. A matrix would be a lot more appropriate, so you could build a system with multiple wall controllers and several zones, and capable of choosing or mixing sources, or play
Sure.
sources independently or simultaneously.
Yeah.
This
Well,
totally
I
does
mean,
that, Josh. Okay.
well,
I've
I
never.
mean, no. Josh's question is valid. I mean,
Okay.
there are times when you do want to have multiple sources, and so a full mixed matrix does make sense. However, um, to keep things simple, one of the most requested application that we get is, I have a bar, I have a restaurant, I've got 3 different sources, and I want to switch between those. You don't need a mixer for that. And so in order to keep the price down, for us, of course, there's those solutions. We make some of those. They're called QSys, and they're fantastic. But in order to hit the price points that a lot of people wanted, we really needed something that operated at basically was a little bit simpler and operated, could deliver that type of functionality at a lower cost. And you'll see that this is a very, very affordable product.
Okay. But you can use it without the mixer altogether. If you just wanted to if
Absolutely.
you wanted to forget the mixer, leave everything as standard input, 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 output, 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 and use it as a matrix. You can certainly recall either with the app, the touch panels, or the serial commands, you can use it as a matrix.
Absolutely. Well, use it. Well, when you say matrix,
When I say
some
matrix,
people
I'm talking
think
about like
matrix
a matrix switch,
source
like the
select.
old fashioned like auto
Yeah,
patch
yeah,
or Extron matrix.
yeah. Like a source select, which is what we've got right
Yeah.
here, right? So I
Okay.
set up my
Okay.
sources and I can select them. Yeah.
Oh, we sell a lot of Atlona. I should have said Atlona. Atlona. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. But I guess everyone's familiar with like Extron. Okay. Let me see. Oh, Mike, follow up. He's like, I've installed 2. I didn't catch the output option with the stereo out. So Mike's actually. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. I'm glad you picked
Nice,
something
Mike.
up
Yeah,
on
I
this
appreciate that.
session today.
I'm glad I could answer that question then.
Oh, here's another follow-up question from Josh. So Josh asks, is it so he said it looks like you can only mix one zone at a time. Will it be fixed eventually to be able to do? I'm guessing he wants to be able to mix multiple zones.
Well, I think Josh, what you want multiple mixes. This only has one mix bus, and
Oh,
so that with one mixer, that mixer could be sent to all the zones, but it's the same mix bus, and
oh,
so
now I
it's not
see
a
what you've been saying. Okay, I apologize.
So I think that I think you're really looking for a multiple matrix mixer, and in that case, this is not that product. Um, and yeah,
Okay. All right. So Michael is asking a follow-up question. Is there integration with the wax amps? And if so, what does that look like?
with the wax amps,
I don't know where he's going with that one. What, Mike,
um,
which amps are you asking about?
I mean, the one thing
Oh,
that we
no,
do,
QSC. It looks like we got auto-corrected. Integration with the amplifiers outside. So the MPA, you reviewed the MPA briefly,
yeah,
but what if somebody wants to use something more powerful for a larger space?
certainly. Yeah, I
What
mean,
would the integration
so
look like with
what
the
we
different
include
series?
what we include in the box is we've got some we have some pre-built jumper cables. So if you're using the MPA amplifiers, it's a simple there's a pre-built cable that comes in the box with the MPM mixer. If you want to use another amplifier, you're totally welcome to do that. And I mean, the MPAs are great for a lot of applications, but certainly if you're doing a higher power application, you'll need a larger amp. And so in that case, you could just clip the end off of the cable and either put on a different Phoenix or XLR or whatever you need to interface. There is no digital interconnect between the MPM zone mixer or any other amplifier. Again,
Okay,
trying to
so
keep the cost down.
sure. With the amplifiers that have their own voicing and sonic signature enhancements and things like that for speakers, you could either use the the DSPs that are in the amplifiers or the DSP that it's in this mixer, either
That
or a combination of
that's
both. I guess
correct.
makes sense.
Well, no, I actually wouldn't recommend a combination of both. It's like
Okay,
yeah, you'd want to use either one or the other, but not both, because you double up on the DSP and you can really turn things bad.
we send a really really hot signal out there. It's
Yeah,
hot
or
at
just
80
too much
hertz. It kills
EQ,
everything.
right? Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Too much 80 hertz, exactly.
yeah. Okay. All right. By the way, that built-in variable loudness is my
Yes.
very favorite function of this entire, my very favorite feature of this entire thing.
It,
So
when
love that.
it's subtle enough to when you turn it on, you don't really notice it, but then when you're listening to the system and you turn it off, you're all, wow, I really miss it. So yeah, absolutely, especially when the volume's down. Agreed.
That was retail back in the early 90s. Denon had that on their two-channel product, their integrateds and their stereo receivers. A variable
Yeah.
loudness that was a potentiometer on the front. You literally set the volume, and then you turned the system up and down by turning the variable loudness pot, and it sounded fantastic. And
Yeah.
no one has replicated that in consumer forever.
Right.
So
Well,
it's really awesome.
it really makes sense to again to model essentially model the human hearing, function. So yeah, it's pretty useful.
Nice. Okay. Oh, Bill's got a question here. So on the App Store, is there a cost associated with either of the apps, MP Install or MP Manager?
I wish we would have done that and it would have gone to me, but no, the answer is no, there is no cost.
Well, that's a change you could make. That's a rolling change.
You know
Even
what?
if even if it's only $5, people will still do it. That could
yeah,
be some lunch money too.
that's right. It adds up over time.
All right. Let me see. We'll tell you what, Dale. How about this? So when YouTube pays us our little commission for how many views we get on this, I'll split it with you. It should be like about a
Sounds
nickel a
good.
year. I'll
Yeah,
just
that'll be
cut it in
great.
half. I'll send you half of that nickel.
That'll be great.
Okay. I think we've gone through all of our questions.
Well, good.
All right. Let me hang on a second. Tim wants to know about the accommodation or demo use. Is that kind of a case-by-case thing? Who should we take that up with? Sean? In our market? Like if a company, if a store wanted to put one on display.
Are, so are you talking amongst AllNet people, or are you? I'm not. Is that a question for me?
That is a question. Yeah, it's a question for you.
So
I guess maybe
so
it's a question for me. I'll just pose it to Sean later.
Well, I think what we can do is we QSC is actually developing some demo kiosks. So basically, it's if anybody visited our demo room at Infocom this year, we had this kiosk, this wooden plinth that had the products, but it also had an iPad that was screwed down and had the software running, and so people could actually try programming it. And so QSC is developing those, and so talk to your QSC sales manager for that, or your local QSC rep. If you don't have those, I'd be happy to help you find who that rep is, or you can go to the QSC website, which is just qsc.com, and then look under contact, and then you can find your local rep and they can help you get that. Great question.
Perfect. Okay. Or if you're in our market, reach out to any of us, or if you're, if your normal salesperson is at Voluetone or MRI or Custom Plus, reach out to your primary contact and we'll put you in touch with the local rep. And if there's any, discount program available, we'll pass that through. Okay. So, Peter, I see your question here, and Tim just brought his phone over to me, so I read your texts. I will send out information on the items, and we will have the recording probably won't be up today. It'll probably take us a few days, so we have to edit it and then upload it. It takes a while, so we have to find a little slot where we've got a couple hours for the machine to cook on it. All right. I think we're good. We ran 25 minutes long. Dale, this was a fantastic presentation. So thank you very much for your time today. And then everyone on the call, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, particularly those of you who are in the Pacific time zone who went into your lunch hour to help to stay with us. So
appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dale, I will be following up with you shortly, and everyone else. So look for so what I'll do in the follow-up to this, I'll send out the links to the QSC training videos that Dale spoke about. So they're easy to follow, and the hosts are very engaging. It's not quite as dry as we can be. So ProSound seems like they have way more fun than we do. So I will send that out as part of the follow-up. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to me, rick.murphy@allnetdistributing.com. And Dale, you want to throw your contact out there?
Yeah, sure. My best way to contact me is dale.sandberg, that's SANDBERG, at QSC.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, Dale, again, thanks for the presentation. It was fantastic today. And we're going to go ahead and end the webinar now.
Thanks a lot. Take care.